Hello, once again, I'm BR Schultz, SP500. It is the end of the day, July 30th. Market's just staying in that roaring 20 phase. No matter how much it seems that markets get close to some kind of peak, they just pop right back up. Month-end window dressing fully engaged, it looks like. Even though they say that doesn't happen, it truly happens. For those of you who watch the month-end window dressing is a real thing. But we continue to see the markets just pop right back up off of every sell-off. So should have one more, I think, sell-off into roughly August 6th should be a bottom. But we are just stuck in overdrive, so it's really hard to understand where we are because all the models are stuck at the top of the charts. And in terms of strength, it looks like it's overbought. But in terms of breaking down, I don't know if we can get like a 5% drop by into August, end of August 6th, August 7th. I think that might be enough to create a nice big move up. Other than that, I think markets are waiting for some kind of hiccup before they can really crash. We would really need to see that 5 to 7% drop into August 6th or 7th to create a really good buy scenario. In my humble opinion, I'm not a professional in any way, shape, or form. I'm not licensed to create the next leg up. I believe we'd have to have some kind of 5 to 7% sell-off. Maybe that's the October peak in the VIX presentation or video that I created a couple of days ago, a week ago or so. Maybe that's where that 5 to 7% crash happens. So again, it's hard to understand in this market just because it's so hot in the roaring 20s. You may remember back in 2021, those of you who followed me in 2022 when I first created the purple wave, the MJ wave, that it projected that there'd be some type of macro peak in around 2030, end of decade, then the Great Depression window. So I want to review that again. I've found an old model. I've refreshed it with monthly data. So the Great Depression would then thus begin in about 62 months. And again, on the monthly model, we're going to discuss why that would happen. So buckle up. This is kind of the grand scale macro view above the what is it called? Above the wood line. You can see a much better view with this, hopefully. And then we would have the final grand finale, September 30th peak. That's why Trump is in such a rush to get so much done, is because he's only got 62 more months of daylight left for America, so to speak, I believe, until we could have a very severe famine or poverty or whatever. Supply chains could really get disrupted, or another pandemic, or all the central bank currencies go on complete lockdown and lock out citizens from using their money, or programming the money so you can't actually use it for much. Become pretty much just an ant within the ginormous ant farm, very constrained by if they program the currency, whatever's going to happen. I don't know. Obviously, we don't know. Can only guess at this point. But we only have 62 months until the Great Depression kicks off. So thank you for joining me. Let's jump to the macro monthly models. So if you remember this graph, it's one of the first times I created a macro model that projected that there would be some type of Great Depression or macro peak in markets at the end of the decade. I created it back in 2022, some of you remember. So I've just taken that model and refreshed it. It's been a few years since I've refreshed it, I believe. And so you can see kind of two trends that are occurring. The first is kind of the obvious giveaway, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, going out to roughly Labor Day of 2030 for the granddaddy peak in markets. But the trend that starts at point number 3 and then kind of moves up a little bit in the purple wave and then hits its head again around 2017-18, that's actually a 3 count as well. And you need a 3 count in order to create a peak, a macro peak in markets. So that's going to be the peak around Super Bowl of 2028. So that would be your first macro peak, I believe, on this model. So there's different waves on different models, things like that nature. I'm not talking about Elliott wave pricing again. Every model has its own wave structure, as you might imagine. So I think that the first peak in this model would be around, that Q1 of 2028, and then we would cool and then pick back up in markets into late 2030 for wave 2 up in this model, and then we would start the Great Depression on wave 3 down, 2031 through 2034, and I'm going to show you that in the next graph. So I want to show you the bottom model version of this graph and see if it's properly synced. So it's my best guess. So let's move on to that. So this is my best guess with this model. I don't think it's refined completely. I've moved it up and down a little bit, try to lock it in as tight as possible to the cycles. You can kind of see that point number 3 around 1991 or 92 doesn't really fit perfectly with the 1, 2, 3 count on the purple wave going onto the bottom in 2003. So it's off just a little bit. So it's hard to say that it's super precise. But what you can see is that there's a 1, 2 going out to roughly that 2028 time frame, where I said that we'd see a peak in markets around Q1 2028, and then you'd see a sell-off into late 2028, even early 2029. So that's kind of what I believe it's picking up. And then I believe that there's a 3 count off of the purple wave on the black line going out into early 2034. Could it be October of 2033 in this model? Sure, it could. Could it do a double bottom like in 08 and 08 and 09, where you could have a very severe October of 2033 and then another retest of the lows in 2034 in March 2034? You certainly could. Obviously, I don't know the future. I can only guess the best I can. I'm wrong at times, or I get too emotional, or all the human error that you can possibly introduce. I'm susceptible to it just like everyone else. But the models seem to do pretty good. And you can tell that the peak models are actually seemingly better than the bottom models in many circumstances, which I used to have the opposite problem. I could never make a peak model to save my life. And now it's I have a harder time finding some of the bottoms sometimes. So yeah, the old switcheroo. So essentially, we would have the Great Depression would officially start off of the February 2028 peak, right? Because you'd have that would be like quote unquote the start of the momentum in these monthly models shifting, right? So even though you could have a higher high in the Labor Day of 2030, it's going to be like a double peak, if you will. So it needs a double peak on some sort of level, even though it might be 3,000 or 4,000, 2,000-3,000 points higher than that in early 2028, right? So to give the effect or the feeling that markets are never going to stop going higher in around Labor Day or Christmas of 2030, and then obviously have a huge decline. And then bottom, what I believe will be as early as March 2034, maybe as late as October of 2034, but that 3 or 4 year window where the Great Depression would unfold. So yeah, you can see the 3 counts on the purple wave, starting in 84, I think, in the graph, and then off the bottoms in the graph in 2018, 17, 18, and then 2021 on the purple wave. And then essentially the model would collapse, decline into a macro bottom in the stock market. Yeah. And I think that's the 30-year cycle, right? Essentially, that's kind of the yellow wave. I think it could create like a false feeling of a bottom. I think maybe a lot of people might think that we've bottomed and we're going to go up for another decade or something. You might get that feeling like, oh, the 30-year cyclical low was a weak one. It wasn't that bad in late 2028. Here we are. It's just a repeat of 2008. This is the buying opportunity of a lifetime, so to speak. This is the 2008-2009 low. You got to load up. It's a 20-year low. Blah blah blah. So then that pushes markets back up into late 2030, and everyone thinks that they've caught the bottom in 2028, when in reality that's just the end of the party. And then the first 3 or 4 years of the new decade is much like 2001 through 2003, but lasting as late as maybe 2034. So thank you for watching this video tonight, and or whenever you're watching it. But yeah, so I think you're going to see markets just continue their roaring 20s type feel into that early 2028 peak, and then it could just be sideways, right? For 10 months, people could, it may not be some severe sell-off. It could just be a sideways run in the markets, stalling, right, before we hit the final peak. So it doesn't have to be some major crash. Usually wave one down is not some major crash. It's just a couple red candles, right? And people, maybe on an annual basis, right, you could lose 2 or 3% in 2028, and then up in 2029 and into 2030. You just need one red candle really on an annual basis. So 2028 could be a red annual candle, so to speak, and that could be where the red wave one down is, and then you have like a 2 wave up into an annual candle, so to speak, on 2029. Even 2030 could end as a positive green candle on an annual basis, and then you could have your 3 big red candles for 2031, 2032, 2033, right? And then you could bottom as early as March 2024, which could start the first quarter of 2034 could be a big red candle, right? And then it could reverse, and then the annual candle for 2034 could end green, right? So in terms of candles, you could have one red down one for 2028, and then an annual candle up for 2029, an annual candle up for 2030, and then you could have the 3, what are they called, the 3 nights or something, the 3 red candles on annual basis for 2031, 2032, 2033, and then 2034 again. First quarter could be really bad, and then the next 3 quarters could turn the candle green for the close of the year. So only 62 months away from the beginning of the Great Depression of our lifetime. I am in my 40s, so I was around for the 2000 peak, and the dot-com burst, and then the real estate burst. So that's what kicked off my adult life, was the dot-com burst. I grew up in a child of the 80s and 90s roaring end of the decade, and so yeah, so I've seen a lot of the collapses. So maybe that's why I'm more bearish than bullish sometimes in life, is because it seems fresh around the college years. We saw so much negativity in markets, so much happened to different sectors. I don't remember some of you that watched the dot-com burst, just all the chips that got destroyed into 2003. It was it was a nightmare. You can go back and look at the QQQ, look how bad it got. But yeah, it was. If you remember watching those tickers, it was pretty horrendous. So this is kind of the structure of the pattern that I see kicking off the Great Depression. 3 red annual bars for 2031, 2032, 2033. So hopefully you can speak with a financial professional who is licensed, which I am not, and get some advice on how to pay down debts, how to best situate yourself if there is a huge economic crisis coming in 2031 through 2033. And if you navigate it extremely well and you want to donate to my work in 2034, maybe you want to see how, if the Lord would be so kind as to help you direct your steps and protect you from great catastrophic failure through 2033. Maybe there's some of you that you are able to use this wisdom and speak with a licensed professional and protect yourself and your family's assets and things of that nature, and you feel that you've been able to navigate it extremely well, and you think that some of it is due to my videos, then yeah, your generosity would be greatly appreciated. Am I going to make my $700,000 goal on GoFundMe? I don't think so, but God works in mysterious ways, so I'm not going to limit him. I've seen him work enough in my life. Every now and then I throw out an answer to prayer, right? I read the George Mueller books. I went through a horrible divorce, and I've had some tough times in my life. So God's humbled me, right? But my wife has always wanted air conditioning in her car. And believe it or not, we've been married over 10 years, never had working air conditioning in any of our vehicles. And as some of you know, I recently had my 7th child. And so I was like, I need to start getting serious about praying for this, asking the Lord for help. So I started praying and saying, Lord, I wouldn't normally ask for this, Lord, but having my children and the babies in the car in the hot summers, I truly would like to request that provide a vehicle with working air conditioning. Some of you might just say, why don't you just spend the money and go do it? Well, rightly so. Some of that argument is very valid. I'll give you that. But I like to see the Lord work. I'm just one of those guys that truly wants to see God work through prayer, because I don't want to just do a system, right? I want to have a relationship with God through faith in Christ. So anyways, some of you know the history. I've read the George Mueller autobiographies, the big thick ones, the 1,000-page ones, the short booklet, that's 100 pages, which I think is an excellent book as well. So anyways, I started praying, asking the Lord for this, and it usually takes the Lord maybe 7, 9, 10 months to answer my prayer. So it's not a short journey if you're trying to figure out how long does it take for the Lord to usually answer my prayers. I found it takes about 3/4 of a year. If it's answered quickly, all right? So I started praying for this. I said, Lord, could you provide a high-quality vehicle at a low cost so that me and my family might have air conditioning? And so, I had my 7th kid or whatnot. And then the in-laws said that there was this car that they knew this mechanic, and there's this vehicle that they had. It was a pretty big vehicle. And wanted to know if we wanted it, and of course said sure. And the first question, of course, I asked was, does it have working air conditioning? So anyways, months would go by, and it get stuck in probate or whatever because it was an estate or so-and-so had died, so it was somehow related or linked to this, right? So just got the vehicle. I don't know. It's been a few months. Obviously started praying back when my wife was first pregnant, right? And it's like a 2004 Cadillac Escalade for $1,500, believe it or not. It's got Michelin tires. It runs great. It's got like 240,000 miles on it, but just runs like a top, just exceptional. And yes, the air conditioning works. So it's just really interesting. It humbles you after a while. Sometimes, when you first get answered prayer, you kind of brag like it's something that you did, right? And then, rightly so, it seems like God kind of closes the door. You're like, why isn't the Lord listening to me more? I'm praying for things, praying for help, not getting any. And then you kind of realize, well, I kind of thought it was my doing, right, that I got my answer to prayer. But yeah, this one, a black SUV Cadillac Escalade for $1,500 is certainly not something that I could do. Not in this environment, not this day and age. And so, And then when you have a lot of kids that are hot in the car, you feel very, you know, very humbled that God would hear your prayer. So, so hopefully there's no pride in me when I say this, but the Lord sincerely answered the prayer of me and my wife to provide such a vehicle. And could we have afforded one? Sure, we could have afforded a vehicle. But you see, I could have never afforded a 2005 Cadillac Escalade SUV, near pristine condition, maybe just one rusty fender. Just it would never happen for $1,500. See, I could have put forth my effort. I could have spent 10, 12, 13, 14 grand on a newer vehicle. I certainly could have. And claimed I didn't need to have faith in God. I just need to use the money that God provided me. I could have easily done that. Any one of us could. But for God to answer my prayer of a high quality vehicle, a high luxury vehicle with a low cost, God had to act in a very specific set of a specific way, so that I know that it was answered prayer, that it's Him working on my behalf and Him hearing my prayer. So I just share that with you for some of you that maybe wonder, do Christians get answers to prayer? Does this guy just talk the talk, or does he try to walk the walk? And tell you right off the bat, I fail as a father completely so often. That's not even a question. But I have to humble myself and ask for forgiveness daily, right? That is my role as a dad, especially being a father of 7. When you have more and more kids, it just exposes your weaknesses more and more. With one kid, maybe you can keep your weaknesses exposed, keep your life pretty and simple. And the more kids you have, it just exposes your weaknesses more and more, and maybe your strengths too, right? But it just shows you where you are a failure. If you are a failure, it's just magnified, right? If you have a short temper, it's magnified. If you are not organized, it's magnified. So it just makes me makes me more. I believe it makes me more humble, or humbled. Maybe I should say. I get more humbled because it exposes my insecurities or my faults, my failures. But hopefully you're encouraged, because as a Christian, I personally like hearing people share answer to prayers that are true answers to prayer, right? That they couldn't have manufactured it themselves. They couldn't have gotten the answer themselves. There's no way that this should have happened or that should have happened, like in George Mueller's book. There's no way that the baker should have shown up at that time when the kids were without food in the entire orphanage, and they needed the food, they needed the milk, and the baker and the dairy driver stopped by and gave them the milk and the bread. It's miraculous, right? And it proves how powerful God is, and faith in Christ. So so that's just a little bit of my life. Hopefully you're encouraged by it. And like I said, it's praying for me is one of my favorite things to do, and see the Lord answer is miraculous. Like He provided the house that we live in is miraculous. It's just it was the only house that was available at the time that we were in a condo and trying to move out, and we had no yard for our kids to play in, and thought we were gonna get stuck in a condo again. This was during COVID, and home prices already jumped up, leapt like crazy up to the sky, and just stayed on my knees praying for 4 years. And the Lord provided quite a few acres for us and a house with many rooms at a very low price. So it was miraculous. So so I don't always try to put my money to work before my prayer life. I always try to pray first for many months before I consider putting my money out there to fix this or that. We fixed our roof right away, obviously, because I needed a new roof. So the answer to prayer was just to get it done. But other things, we have a couple other vehicles, so could sit there and pray and pray and pray and ask the Lord to provide such an answer. So if my kids are listening to this years down the road, hopefully you remember these things and how God has answered our prayers that we've taken the time throughout week in and week out, trying to pray and asking God for help, provide for our needs. He has been so kind. So don't forget these kids if you're listening to this video down the road. But it is quite interesting. So obviously, yes, I pray a lot about my stock market timing too, and ask for help in understanding things. I don't get a lot right. At times, I'm a huge failure. So don't think that I'm gonna get everything right, please. I've made some huge calls that have been correct, and I've made some huge failures as well. So please use your own indicators. Please make sure that you're, speaking with others, trying to get a full view outside of my emotional little worldview. But if models are as I see them, we should, start the Great Depression in 2031, and it'll last into maybe earliest 2034. So anyways, long video tonight. Sorry about that. I was going to try to keep it pretty short, but yeah, just thought I'd share how the Lord has been working in my life. And yeah, I've been a Christian for about 30 some years, so it's a relationship. It truly is. And the longer I've had this relationship with the Lord, the answers to prayer have only gotten bigger and bigger. And I think it shows that as you grow and you grow in the fruits of the Spirit, and you grow in humility, and realizing that we really are nothing before God, like Hudson Taylor said. I think it creates a different attitude in prayer and in humility in how we approach God through faith in Christ alone. And yeah, so I attribute it to what George Mueller would as well. And again, if you want to read the George Mueller book, it's the Power of Prayer, and it's about 140 pages. You can find it on Amazon. Again, that's George Mueller. He ran like 5 orphanages back in the mid 1800s, solely through prayer and faith, and never asked anyone for any money personally. It's a miraculous story, and if you ever need your faith encouraged, that's where I would start. And if you're hearing this before the 2030, I would encourage you to get the book. And if you're hearing this after 2030, maybe you haven't read the book yet, and you own it, but you have never read it. I would think that's a great place to start. And oftentimes, I think that God sends giant storms into our lives to get us to move in directions we wouldn't normally. And I would have never read the George Mueller, The Power of Prayer booklet, 140 pages, and I read the autobiography as well. I think they're each, it's 2-volume set, I think about 1,400 pages each. So I didn't read all of it, but I read quite a bit of it, of the 2-volume set. But I would have never read it if I would have never gone through my horrific divorce. Had to depend upon God quite a bit in that. So, anywho, hopefully you're able to use my videos for talking ideas with your financial expert or licensed professional, and hopefully hear my answer to prayers and the things about George Mueller is an encouragement or an idea for you to do devotions or something, maybe with your significant other, with your kids. I have my kids read it from time to time to encourage their faith, as well as I try to put have bigger prayer items with my kids, because if you put your money into everything, you fix everything with your money, you never allow your kids' faith to grow through waiting on the Lord. And so, especially in America, it's difficult because so many people want to judge you for being different in today's culture, being countercultural and trusting God. But I would encourage you, if you've never trusted the Lord for certain things, maybe a failed relationship or something that is beyond your control, and you have the humility to trust that God can do it. I'm not saying that I'm not saying it for health, wealth, and prosperity. I don't believe in the health, wealth, and prosperity gospel at all. but more as a way to deepen your faith and give glory to God through answered prayer. Again, not health, wealth, and prosperity. That often leads to just pride and selfishness and trying to get the biggest airplane in the world, and all those preachers that are infamous for just trying to soak up everyone's money and buy a huge airplane, 5 airplanes, 5 brand new SUVs. That's not what God is about. Sorry, it's just not. This is not our home. This is not God's kingdom. The kingdom we look forward to is in heaven. So maybe this is more the spiritual side of my stock market timing point. I won't do this all the time, obviously. I rarely do this. Maybe 1 out of every 10 or 12 videos I do this. So hopefully some of you are encouraged by it. And yes, I'm continuing to try to study different markets and understand how markets are constructed, things of that nature. Still looking for about, I think, 340 on the S&P 500 around September of 2030, if I'm right, for a peak. But yeah, you can see from the models that I'm definitely expecting that we do go into the Great Depression window, all set up for a Great Depression, honestly. And I don't think Trump can fully get us out of that. I think the Fed, Jerome Powell has made sure that we're going into it and trying to make sure that it's as difficult as possible for Americans to be financially prepared going into it. With him keeping interest rates high, Jerome Powell is trying to seal the doom of Americans. He's doing his best to try to destroy the middle class, it would seem. And so that's Jerome Powell, and he will probably go down as one of the worst Fed chairs in history, along with Andrew Mellon, the father of the Great Depression from the 1930s. I think Jerome Powell will be remembered for his horrible mistakes going into the Great Depression of the 2030s. So that's just my personal, my guess. That's my prediction. So Jerome Powell is always late, and always his intelligence always seems transitory. He never seems like he's smart enough. He always talks kind of out of both sides of his mouth, like saying, it was only a few months ago where Jerome Powell kind of smirked and said that pretty soon people won't be able to get mortgages in some areas of the country. They won't be able to buy a house, right? And he was just saying that months ago. And here he is, all the KPIs are fine, and he needs to lower rates so that people can buy a house, and he's not doing it, right? So he's very smug, and he seems to disdain the middle class, and he is a horrible, pathetic Fed chair. And I've been saying this long before Trump became president. Those of you who followed me remember. He was notorious. He'll forever go down for saying that inflation is transitory, and he made one of the biggest blunders that a Fed, just like what's his name back in the 90s. But Jerome Powell is a complete failure as a federal chair, and it looks like he's deliberately trying to destroy the middle class through high interest rates, and it's very interesting. And it seems that a lot of people are waking up to the fact that a Great Depression is about to unfold after the end of the decade. There's a high probability. It's not for sure, but obviously there's a high probability. So, and I don't have any advertisements here. I'm not selling gold or anything, right? So this is all just me doing my thing. So again, if you want to donate to my cause, you can go to the GoFundMe or PayPal or whatever you want. But yeah, it's harder than nails trying to find a bottom in this market, just because it's the roaring 20s. And we'll have to see what happens around the Super Bowl of 2028, see if we get that macro peak. So anyways, hopefully you enjoy my videos and you get something out of them. And yes, I missed the bottom in April. I lost money on that, and lost quite a bit of money on that. So I'm hopefully not coming across as bragging or anything like that. I've made my fair share of mistakes. So thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm BR Schultz, SP500. Again, this is just a snippet of the GoFundMe page. I didn't want you to forget that, so thank you. And please bookmark it, whatever, and watch it over the next decade or into late 2034. Thank you so much.